Business is a statement by John Swinney on education COVID-19. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions at the end of his statement, so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on John Swinney. Cabinet Secretary, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Throughout the school year, the Government has sought to safeguard the health and well-being of everyone, pupils, teachers, staff and students in the education system. And we have sought to protect the importance of learning, recognising the benefit that lies in teaching and the harm that comes from its withdrawal. That approach has been led by the public health advice and science, but despite the clarity and strength of that advice, it inevitably remains a judgment that must be made as to the best way forward. Today I want to provide an update on the judgments we have made across a range of issues for schools and universities. I confirmed last week no change to Christmas school holidays. That decision was driven by the expert public health advice I received and published alongside my decision and will ensure greater continuity of learning. The evidence makes clear that school closures result in significant harms to our children and young people. That is why we want to keep our schools, colleges and universities open. But we must also keep people safe. That is why we keep our safety guidance under close review to ensure that measures remain robust and effective. In schools, recent ONS data shows no evidence of any difference between the positivity rates of teachers and other school staff relative to other worker groups of a similar age. And there is no current direct evidence that transmission within schools plays a significant contributory role in driving increased rates of infection among children, although we continue to scrutinise all such evidence carefully. That is reassuring news, and it is down in no small part to the extraordinary efforts of teachers and staff in keeping our schools safe. I reiterate our thanks for that work, but I am also conscious that many staff still have understandable anxiety. To address this, we have already put in place arrangements to allow members of school staff to get a coronavirus test, whether or not they have symptoms. We are currently the only part of the United Kingdom that provides this routine access. We will now go further. As set out by the Cabinet Secretary for Health last week, after schools return in January, we will begin piloting routine asymptomatic testing of school staff. Details are currently under discussion with interested local authorities, and I will provide further details on this to Parliament in due course. Presiding Officer, I will now turn to our colleges and universities. For many students, particularly those living away from home for the first time, I know that this year will have been incredibly tough, and I express my thanks to students and staff for their resilience. Last month, the Higher Education Minister set out our plans for ensuring the safe return home of students who wish to do so at the end of term. Our universities and colleges have already delivered over 20,000 rapid result tests to students looking to return home. I now want to update Parliament on our plans for ensuring the safe return of students following the winter break. College students who largely do not move away from home to go to education should return as planned, in line with the protection level for the area their college is in at that time. Universities are, however, in a different position. As a result of the high number of people moving around the country, changing household and mixing as they return to university, we have to take a different approach. At the start of the new term, universities' return will be staggered over at least 6 weeks. With some limited exceptions, undergraduate students will restart their studies at home at the normal beginning of term and should only return to campus under term time accommodation when asked to do so by their university. We will keep our approach under review to ensure that it remains in line with the most up-to-date scientific advice. As with our guidance for the end of term, we are also asking students to voluntarily restrict their social interaction for 2 weeks before they return to university and for 2 weeks following their return. And we will build on our experience of offering asymptomatic testing to students before the end of term. Students will again be offered lateral flow testing as part of their return, and we are working with universities and student representatives to build on the systems already established to deliver this second phase of testing. Presiding Officer, these arrangements will carry Scotland's education system safely into the new year. The challenge after that is the exams. When I addressed Parliament on the 7th of October, I said that cancelling the National 5 diet was a way to secure more time and so enhance the chances of a higher and advanced higher diet proceeding. We had dual priorities of safety and fairness. If exams were to take place, these had to be made safe and fair to all pupils. The prospects for public health have been improved immeasurably due to the development of a vaccine, but we know that it will unavoidably take time to be rolled out. And already pupils have lost significant learning time. First, they lost weeks of teaching time at the end of last year, time when pupils normally start to study for the following year's qualifications. That has now been compounded by the disruption many have suffered as they were obliged to self-isolate, had to learn from home, or even saw their school closed. And we know that the level of disruption to learners has not been equal. Almost 40% of those who were not in school for more than 1/5 of school openings for a COVID-related reason in S4 are from our poorest communities. In S5, it is 33%, and in S6, it is 26%. And while we hope that public health will improve in the coming months, we cannot guarantee that there will be no further disruption to pupils' learning. In light of this, the question is less whether we can hold the exams safely in the spring, and more whether we can do so fairly. There is no getting around the fact that a significant percentage of our poorest pupils have lost significantly more teaching time than other pupils. Changing the exams for all does not and cannot address that. Instead, we need a model that is more flexible to the specific circumstances of the individual pupil. That model exists. It is the model we plan to use toward qualifications this year for National Fives. A group led by the SQA and involving directors of education from our councils, members of the EIS, Colleges Scotland and others has been working to develop this model. Under this plan, all schools and colleges are working with the SQA to understand the standards required for qualifications. They will then apply this to specified pieces of evidence such as coursework. Provisional results for individual pupils will be submitted to the SQA by the 28th of May before certificates are awarded on the 10th of August. Details of the model for National 5 will be published by the National Qualifications 2021 group today, a model that focuses on the work and performance of young people during the year. Let me be clear that no algorithm will be used in this exercise. It is a model that will be based on learner evidence, subject to quality assurance at local and national level, to deliver a credible and fair set of results. It is a model that has achieved a broad level of support across Scotland's education professionals. I am therefore announcing today that there will be no higher or advanced higher exams in 2021. Instead, we will adopt the new model that has been developed and base awards on teacher judgment of evidence of learner attainment. This is safe, it is fair, and it better recognises the reality of the disruption so many pupils have had to their learning in the course of the last few months. I've taken action previously to support schools to respond to COVID with additional investment of £135 million, which includes the recruitment of more than 1,400 additional teachers and temporarily suspended inspections. However, in acknowledgement of the additional workload of assessment of national qualifications in this unique academic year in the absence of exams, I intend to make an exceptional one-off payment to teachers and lecturers who are critical in assessing and marking National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher courses this year. We will progress this urgently with partners and employers, including discussing when and how the payment will be delivered. In addition, I would ask that secondary schools prioritise all remaining in-service daytime to work together on this alternative model of certification for national qualifications. Many schools still have 2 or 3 of the 5 annual in-service days left. Presiding Officer, I will not stake the future of our higher pupils, whether they get a place at college, university, training or work, on a lottery of whether their school was hit by COVID. Exams cannot account for differential loss of learning and could lead to unfair results for our poorest pupils. This could lead to pupils' futures being blighted through no fault of their own. That is simply not fair. Education is the greatest antidote to poverty that we have. That is why we have sought to protect learning even in the midst of a pandemic. We pledged to keep people safe. We pledged to protect schools, colleges and universities and to keep them open. And we pledged to fairly recognise the hard work and the achievement of all. I believe the measures I have announced today make good on all of those pledges.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. We now have 20 minutes for questions. Can I ask for succinct questions, if possible, succinct answers? And I call James. Oh, and I mean to ask members who want to ask a question, please press the request to speak button. I now call Jamie Green to be followed by Ian Gray. Mr. Green.
Thank you. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of his statement, and we also thank teachers for their hard work this year. We on these benches called for debate for this decision to be made after months of dither and delay, which caused so much upset amongst parents and thousands of pupils. But the decision today to cancel higher exams will come as a disappointment to those who believe that exams offer consistency, fairness and a level playing field. The statement today is far from one which makes good on promises. It is instead an admission of complete failure, because we were told in October that cancelling National 5 exams would save the hires. Failed. We were told it was the safety of exams which sat at the heart of that decision-making. Failed. We were told it was home learning which was delivering for every pupil in every part of Scotland. Again, failed. We were told it would not be teachers who would bear the brunt of the assessment workload. Again, failed, Cabinet Secretary. There are many unanswered questions that result from today's statement. So let me ask, will teachers and their estimates still be moderated? And if they will be moderated, how will they be moderated? Will the appeals process this year instead be robust and fair to young people? And what role will the SQA have in all of this? Starting off so that the mistakes of 2020 cannot be repeated in 2021. A promise must be made today that we will not let that happen.
Cabinet Secretary.
I listen with great care to Mr Green, but I don't think he listens with great care to me over the course of what I say to Parliament. I made clear in October that there remains significant vulnerability around the higher and advanced higher diet because of the potential for disruption to learning for young people. And I've come to that conclusion at, I would point out to Mr Green, a point which is about 2 months earlier than I said was the latest point at which this could be, this decision could be taken. So there's no delay in all of this. And I've carefully looked at the evidence, and once I've become persuaded by the evidence of disruption to access to learning for young people, to give them an equal chance at an exam, and the point I made in the statement is that an exam cannot, and changes to an exam cannot take account of the differential disruption to learning of a pupil who's had to self-isolate or a pupil who's not had to self-isolate. That an exam and its composition cannot possibly be expected to do that. So teacher estimates will be at the heart of the model that we take forward. The detail on that has been set out by the National Qualifications 2021 group. It is a robust model based on the gathering of evidence during the year to ensure that young people are able to have due account taken of the learning that they have accomplished, and I'm certain it will deliver strong results for those young people. And the last point I'd make, Presiding Officer, is on the question of the appeals system. The Priestley Review asked for enhancements to the appeals system to be undertaken, and the SQA is working on those propositions.
Ian Gray to be followed by Claire Adams.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Deputy First Minister for early sight of his statement. In my view, these decisions make sense, but yet again they are made very, very late. Students are already returning home, many having to do so unsure until now how or whether they would be able to return. And school pupils are preparing for or even sitting prelims for exams which will not now happen. In both cases, pupils, teachers, students and universities have been pleading for clarity for weeks, so they need it urgently now. A staggered return for students could lead to significant demands for refunds on university accommodation rents. So what agreement has the Deputy First Minister reached with universities on this potential loss of funding for them? And as for the alternative assessment model, given we are already in December, can he say when the higher and advanced higher scheme will be published? And can he assure us that it will have teacher judgment at its heart and take full consideration of disruption to learning, that it will not be simply a version of the exam administered and marked in the classroom, as many teachers believe the National 5 scheme to be?
Cabinet Secretary.
On the points that Mr Gray raises, the question of the guidance from the SQA has been clear that prelims are not a necessary part of the assessment model this year, But if schools are undertaking prelims, that contributes to the evidence base upon which teachers can make judgments. They are not prelims for the final exams. They are assessments of the learning that young people have undertaken. In relation to the question of staggered returns to university, we've made a judgment in consultation with Universities Scotland about the importance of avoiding the situation we faced in the autumn of this year by spreading the return of students, and it will be for universities to establish any implications of that in relation to their own arrangements. And finally, on Mr Gray's point about the assessment model, it will be anchored on teacher judgment. It will be based on teachers' assessment of the potential of young people. And as I indicated in my statement, that guidance is being issued today by the National Qualifications 2021 group, and the higher guidance will follow as quickly as it possibly can do to make sure that there is every available opportunity months earlier than was the case in the 2020 diet to ensure that teachers have got the opportunity to familiarise themselves with the basis of judgments that have got to be made.
Claire Adamson, followed by Oliver Mundell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Deputy First Minister mentioned in his statement that a significant number of pupils who were absent from school for more than 20% of the time for a COVID-related reason were from our poorest communities. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister what support has been provided to these pupils to ensure that they have been able to continue their education from home in the absence of face-to-face teaching, to ensure that we continue to build on the work to narrow the poverty-related attainment gap?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, there's a range of measures that have been put in place which are supported by individual schools, but then also by the national digital arrangements that are in place, principally through the partnership between Education Scotland, the Directors of Education and local authorities, and eSchool. And for example, this week there are 27 study support courses available through eSchool, which are signed up to by thousands of pupils the length and breadth of the country, providing that additional support out with the school day to individual young people. Now, crucially, of course, there is digital access required there, and in the course of the pandemic, over 50,000 devices have been made available to pupils from the poorest backgrounds, and also a number, I think around about 9,000 of connectivity packages to go with that as well. So we're providing the educational and the digital support to young people around the country, and that will help to address the issues of ensuring equity of access to education for young people to overcome the poverty-related attainment gap.
Oliver Mundell, followed by Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I listened to the answer to Ian Gray and I'm still none the wiser. Will university students still need to keep paying for accommodation that they can't access if they're not able to return? And how will these measures impact on those students, often our poorest students, who have to work during term time?
Cabinet Secretary. Well, any issue about the accommodation issues is for the universities to address with individual students that are affected. What's crucial is that young people, students, have the opportunity to access learning as part of this process. And in relation to the final point of Mr Mundell's question, there will of course be dialogue between the universities and students to ensure that all of their access to learning is supported in the most effective way possible.
Fulton McGregor, followed by Ross Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome today's announcement. I know that many young people will be disappointed, but that many others will be very relieved. For example, I've had contact from students in my constituency that have already had to isolate 2, 3 or sometimes 4 times, and are worried about the impact this could have on their exams. We already know that self-isolation can be more common and more profound in areas of higher deprivation such as North Lanarkshire. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what impact this has had in his decision today, and what further safeguards will be put in place for the assessment models for those students that may have been impacted by periods of self-isolation this school year?
Cabinet Secretary.
President Officer, the emerging pattern of impact, and particularly the the disproportionate impact on young people from areas of deprivation has affected my judgment because it is at the heart of ensuring there is fairness to all candidates of all backgrounds in relation to the access to exams. So that question has been fundamental to the decision making that I have arrived at. Now, obviously, there are a range of views about this particular question. I discussed the issue personally with a range of young people from a whole host of different geographies around the country last week. There were different views in that conversation, but there was a pretty consistent expression of concern by young people about the disruption and the differential disruption to educational opportunity because of periods of self-isolation. And it's for that reason that I think we have to take this early action to make sure that young people are certain about the opportunities that will be available for them during the course of this school year.
Ross Greer, followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you. The Greens have called for all 2021 exams to be cancelled since it became clear that the level of disruption would simply make a fair exam diet impossible. So we welcome today's announcement. The Education Secretary can't let the SQA repeat their approach to National 5 assessments with higher and advanced higher, though. Despite its categorical assurances earlier this year, the SQA have created a system which has significantly added to teachers' workload, including expecting them to take on the large additional work of an SQA marker. Given Scotland's school system was already dependent on teachers doing an average of 11 hours overtime a week pre-pandemic, can the Education Secretary say if he thinks this additional workload is a fair ask of teachers?
Before you rise, can I remind members, please, to have short questions? There's still people wanting to get, and I want to give everybody their chance. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the first point I need to make is that the model that has been created has been created by collaboration involving, led by the SQA, yes, but it's involved directors of education on behalf of local authorities, it's involved the professional associations, the EIS, and it's also involved Colleges Scotland. So this is not a product of the SQA alone, it is a system-wide product to make sure that there is system-wide agreement on the best way to proceed on this issue. The second point I need to make is that the design of that model has been undertaken to align this as closely as possible to the ongoing assessment work that teachers would be undertaking as part of their routine activities as a teacher in preparing young people to have command of a particular course. And the third point I would make is that in my statement, I referenced the fact that I wanted to see the, and we'll discuss this with our local authority partners, the remaining in-service days in the secondary sector used to enable teachers to prepare for this particular task, and we will also recognise the additional workload through a unique one-off payment to meet the to reflect that contribution from teachers to this process.
Willie Rennie, followed by John Mason.
The decision to cancel exams was inevitable. It would have been unfair to proceed when thousands of young people have faced massive disruption to their schooling, whilst others have had none. But just because the pupils won't face exams does not mean they should miss out on a good educational experience. So what additional catch-up support will be made available for those pupils? And on universities, will students be tested before the return to campus? And if not, does that not risk bringing the virus back to the universities? Cabinet Secretary.
On the first point that Willie Rennie raises, I set out in my answer to Claire Adamson some of the additional study support that's been made available through eSchool, and I assure Willie Rennie that this is a growing and expanding proposition that's available. So there's 27 different study support opportunities for this current week, and there will be other arrangements of that in due course, as well as the work that individual schools are undertaking to support young people and their learning. On the second point, and I understand exactly the reasons underlying Willie Rennie's question, I don't think there is a practical way to deliver testing to students other than when they return to campus. But in my statement, I said that we asked students to voluntarily reduce their social interaction 2 weeks before they come back to university and 2 weeks after they come back to university to try to minimise the risk that he correctly highlights is potentially there. But I can't see any other way of operating and delivering that testing approach without doing it in the fashion on campus, which has been done, I have to say, thankfully, really quite smoothly in the course of the last couple of weeks, much to my relief. And obviously we want to replicate that in the new year.
Can I remind members it's to ask a question, not questions, plural, which means the Cabinet Secretary has to take longer to answer. 6 people still waiting to get in, so I want single questions. John Mason, followed by Daniel Johnson.
Thank you very much. Employers, colleges, universities all want consistency and to know what a pass means. Can the Cabinet Secretary say anything about how an A pass in 2019 compares to 20, compares to 21?
Cabinet Secretary.
There's obviously differences in the certification model that are taken forward, but fundamentally the test that we want to ensure is passed is that young people have undertaken the necessary learning for all of their courses and been certificated accordingly, and as a consequence employers and other institutions can be assured that standards have been maintained in the process.
Daniel Johnson, followed by Rhoda Mackay.
Following the controversy of moderation in 2020, will the Cabinet Secretary commit to publishing whatever system is used to verify and alter grades awarded this year in full and in a repeatable and transparent methodology?
Thank you, Mr Johnson. An ideal question. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the material that's been published today, I think, gives a very clear and transparent explanation of the approach that will be taken at the heart of the alternative certification model. I think it gives the type of clarity and information that Mr Johnson is seeking, and of course it has been the product of dialogue involving a range of different educational stakeholders to maximise agreement and support. So I think that will be addressed by the point that in the point that Mr Johnson has raised, and obviously we will communicate further information in relation to the higher process and the advanced higher process in due course.
Rhoda Mackay, followed by Joanne Lamont.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Cabinet Secretary what discussions the Scottish Government has had with key stakeholders, particularly from the college and university sectors, to ensure that the widening access agenda remains a priority for all, so we can continue to see more pupils from disadvantaged backgrounds gaining a place at college or university in 2021.
Cabinet Secretary.
So there has been extensive dialogue with stakeholders around these developments. I also would take this opportunity to compliment our universities on the commitment they have demonstrated to the widening access agenda. We have made very significant progress in a relatively short space in time as a consequence of the engaged participation of the universities in this process. And I know from my discussions with the university sector and those of the Higher Education Minister that universities are absolutely committed to that agenda.
Joanne Lamont, followed by Liz Smith.
Thank you very much. As has been acknowledged, young people living in poverty, disabled young people who are care experienced are disproportionately affected by the crisis caused by the pandemic, and many of these young people have become more distant and less engaged with learning since the virus hit. Can I ask what assessment has been made of the extent of this disproportionate impact, what specific support measures will be put in place, and how will support be targeted to ensure that those who are most at risk of falling out of the education systems altogether will benefit?
Well, that was 3 questions when I asked for 1, but please, if you can, Cabinet Secretary.
But very important questions, Presiding Officer, and at the heart of the point that Joanne Lamont raises is the importance of ensuring that every child, no matter their background or their circumstance, is able to access education as their pathway to their future life. And so many of the measures that are utilised are supported by the investment the government has made, for example, in the Attainment Scotland Fund, and in ensuring that schools where they have young people who are significantly affected by these barriers to learning are properly resourced and supported to assist in that challenge. I've cited the additional opportunities of digital engagement and learning to reach young people, and there's very good information about the availability of those mechanisms. And finally, individual schools, and all my interaction with schools, are utterly focused on making sure they reach all of their learners, no matter their circumstances. And I know that will lie at the heart of the approach that schools will be able to take forward in light of the announcements that I've made today.
And if it can be brief, Liz Smith will be followed by Gillian Martin.
Thank you. Could the Cabinet Secretary confirm what guidance will be given to the very small number of college students who live in halls of residence and not at home?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think we'll certainly work with Colleges Scotland on these questions to make sure that advice is very clear. There are a very limited number of students in such a circumstance, hence the significance of their return is much lower than, for example, the return of students to the University of Edinburgh, for example. So we will work with Colleges Scotland and individual colleges to give that guidance. I would, of course, put in the important caveat, which I mentioned in my statement, that the restriction level in a particular local authority area is very meaningful in determining the manner in which young people return to college at a particular time.
Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Whittled my question down to one. It's about priority given to students who are maybe on placement or for whom there's a large degree of a practical element in their studies in terms of getting them back to the university campus. What guidance has been given to universities in that regard?
Cabinet Secretary.
In my statement, I made reference to there were certain exemptions to the situation in relation to the staggered return, and essentially that question is central to the judgments that have got to be made by universities about which students need to return earlier for the benefit to ensure they can fulfil essentially practical courses as part of their education. So that issue lies at the heart of the exemption that we've put in place.
Thank you. That concludes questions on education COVID-19. Again, I thank members and Cabinet Secretary as everyone managed to get their questions. And it's time to move on to the next item of business. There will be a short pause.